Oh, wait, we're not on the air.
No, you're
Okay,
not.
all right. We're going to call this meeting to order, and before we get started, I'd like to say congratulations and happy to have Henry Taylor. I was doing good to remember Henry.
You did very well. You did very well. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the team.
Congratulations.
Glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
Okay, so Rhonda, can we have the roll call of members, please?
Ms. Temple.
Here.
Mrs. Williams.
Here.
Ms. Person West. Dr. Radden.
Here.
Ms. McLean.
Here.
Ms. Markham.
Here.
Mr. Taylor.
Here.
Thank you. Okay. Executive closed session per North Little Rock School District Policy 1.14A, stating that private or closed discussions by the board may occur as part of a regular or special board meeting. Executive sessions may be held only for the purpose of considering employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, or resignation of an employee, or to discuss matters of pupil punishment if requested by parent or legal guardian. No resolution, agreement, or motion considered in executive session shall be legally binding unless the board reconvenes in public session and presents the item for vote of membership. Additionally, Arkansas Code Title 25, Chapter 19, Section 106 2C states that we should announce the purpose of executive session before going into executive session. So will you please join me for executive closed session to discuss the following matters: employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, and resignation of an employee.
President, members of our Board of Education, our first action item is the employment of personnel, 5.1. The superintendent recommends the employment of personnel as discussed in executive closed session.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I also move that we accept 5.1 employment of personnel.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, next action item is 5.2. The superintendent recommends to adopt a resolution with the attached proposed budget of the expenditures with tax levy for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2025 to and including June 30th of 2026.
Madam Chair, I move that we submit an application for a permit to issue bonds with, related documents for, is it 71,630,000 in construction bonds to the State Department of Education and to employ First Security Beardsley as physical agent.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of our Board of Education, next action item is 5.3. Superintendent recommends to submit an application for a permit to issue bonds.
Madam President, I move that we accept the recommendation of the superintendent to submit an application for a permit to issue bonds.
Second.
There's a motion in here that needs to be read. Can you click
Okay.
on the,
Click on that.
click on the,
You got it?
It's a PDF.
Twins.
Sorry. I move that we submit an application for a permit to issue bonds with related documents for $71,630,000 in construction bonds to the State Department of Education and to employ First Security Beardsley as fiscal agent.
So if I can interrupt,
Yes.
I think that the links got flipped, because I think Dr. Redis just read that motion, and so.
They're
I
the
believe
same.
In your packets, are they the same?
yes.
Okay. So
I have this one.
those are the three motions. So we've started with number 2. If, Ms. Temple, if it's be okay if I could tell you what the next motion would be?
Okay, what, the one that we just did, what was that for 5.3?
Because I can't see the agenda, so.
I read the one, I read the second motion. I read the second motion.
Okay, all right, so we gotta go back to 5.2 to adopt the resolution.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go back to 5.2 to adopt the resolution. You go ahead.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I move that we adopt the resolution with the attached proposed budget of expenditures with tax levy for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2026 to and including June 30th, 2027 as printed.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Perfect.
All right, so now we're on to employ First Security.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I move that we employ First Security Beardsley as financial advisor for a period of 3 years, effective as of the date of adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
you.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, the next action item is 5.5. This is the proposed modification to CPPC Policy 8.0. The CPPC recommends to approve the proposal modified to CPPC Policy 8.0 Personnel Policy Committee.
Okay.
Madam
Okay.
President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the proposed modification to CPPC Policy 8.0.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Madam President. The last action item is 5.6. The superintendent recommends to approve the community service learning partner application of Armadillo Rodeo.
Madam President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the application for the Community Service Learning Partner
Second.
of Armadillo Rodeo.
Yes.
Second.
All right, moving properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
None.
Motion
So
carried.
cute.
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I move that we adjourn and go into workshop.
Second.
Excellent. Okay, here we go. Madam President, members of our Board of Education, our first information item is financial ethics training, and I'll have Mr. Brian Brown, our CFO, and Mr. Ken Rich from APSRC Director. We've asked Mr. Rich to come. He's actually done this same financial fiscal training on ethics with all of our executive leadership this week. I know that many of you receive this within your school board training as well, but it's something that we want to get in a habit into, is always coming back to the board as a refresher, and I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Brown, before we get started.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Paluski, Board President, and members of the board. We've got Mr. Ken Rich here with us. He's the director of APSRC, and one of the things we're looking at doing is doing a better job of being knowledgeable about the involvement of employees in their businesses. That's one of the things we're responsible of, trying to make sure that we police that information as it is made available to us. And so we've done a training with our executive team. We're going to do this training as well. And then we'll produce a video that will be released to our employees, the body of our employees, that they will do a small training on how to fill out what the implications of these ethical guidelines are, what they're required to disclose, how they fill out the forms. And so this is our steps that we're taking to become better at this particular point that we're supervising here. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Rich. He's going to walk y'all through some of the ethical.
All right, thank you for the opportunity. I'm not the director of APSRC, I'm the director of finance services over there. So I deal mostly with the finance services, and I'm a former school superintendent, so let me say I appreciate the work that you do as board members. Very important work for the students, community, and the parents in this area, so thank you very much for your work. We're going to do a little kind of Cliff Notes version. Got to see Mr. Taylor sworn in earlier tonight, and during that swearing in, I didn't even realize that part of the swearing in is that you'll abide by the ethics rules and that you will not contract with the school that you're the board member for.
No.
And that's the primary thing that we're going to be talking about tonight in the ethics training. All right? So real quickly, this all started in the state of Arkansas with Act 1599 of 2001. So these ethics standards are not new. They're for board members, employees, and administrators. And so it deals with all three of them. Tonight we're going to primarily focus on just the administrators, okay? So basically within the rules, the purpose is set forth to make sure that you're not involved in any transactions or that you don't expect anything in return for being a board member other than doing your work for the students in the community, and that you don't take any gratuities or kickbacks as a board member. And I always feel like when I do these sessions, I do 20, 30 a year, I'm preaching to the choir. I know you guys understand that from the get-go, but you know what? There's always somebody out there somewhere where something bad happens. It's human nature, right? So we want to make sure that we just get a constant reminder of this. So let's move on to the prohibitions. The prohibitions are that you do not use your position to gain anything personally. So you're not trying to turn this into money for yourself, a job for yourself, or something else. You purely work for the public. Simple. I think you guys are all in agreement with that, right? So it doesn't prevent you from donating property or services to the school. So you could donate something to the school. You can donate your time to the school, for that matter. You certainly shouldn't get any kickbacks of any kind. I mentioned to the administrative team the other day, what if somebody walked up to the administrative team or to a board member and said, hey, we appreciate you being a board member. We got tickets to the suite over here at Simmons Arena for the next concert. We're just going to invite you over there to, appreciate you being a board member. Well, if that's your friend that you know and they're not doing it because you're on the board, that's one thing. If they're doing it because you're a member of the Board of Education, that's another. So a gratuity is anything or anything over $100. So you can't take anything with more than $100, and those tickets obviously would be worth more than $100. So you would have to decline that offer. We're going to look at basically three different ways that the scenarios, and the State Department, DESE, puts these together. It's kind of a flow chart. And if you'll look at the top of this flow chart, it kind of asks the question, what's the board member wanting to do? Do they have a conflict of interest? And the question is, can a board member contract with the school district that they're serving on the board? And the answer, Mr. Taylor knows because he just swore to it, is no, you can't. Now, you did hear the person doing the ceremony say, unless it meets the guidelines or requirements of the law, right? And so the answer really is no, you should not contract with the school. You may own a business out here, you may own some kind of business in the community that could serve the school, but the school really should look to do business with somebody besides the person that's on the board, unless there's no one else available. And that's what that middle section says. Are there any unusual or limited circumstances, like they're the only local provider? Well, the odds of you being the only local provider in the North Little Rock area are pretty slim, right? Now, if you're out in a real rural community like I worked in, and there's not a large town within, an hour or two, there are times the board member might be the best choice, the only choice. They're the only local provider. But basically is, you cannot serve as a contractor if you're on the board. If there is some unusual and limited circumstance, and what's the definition of unusual and limited circumstance? It means it's very uncommon or rare. So it doesn't happen very often, but let's say it does. If it does happen that you're the only local provider, or that you as a board member had a business that could beat the other business by $40,000, $50,000, whatever the case may be, some really rare circumstance, then the board could contract with that person if the rest of the board agreed. Board member Taylor, he owned the business, he would have to step out. The board would make that decision, and then you would just have a resolution to do business with that board member for up to $10,000. If it's over $10,000, it has to be approved by the Secretary of Education. And the first question they're going to ask is, could you have done business with anyone else? And if the answer is yes, then you shouldn't do business with the board member. So that's pretty much the case for a board member. Second situation, what about hiring a board member's family member? Can I hire a board member's family member? Obviously, Ms. Temple says no, and that's the correct answer. You cannot hire one of your family members when you're on this board. And I've seen a few situations where somebody's resigned from a board, so their daughter or their son or somebody else could actually apply. But you can't hire someone and be a board member. Now, a question always comes up is, well, when you say hire a family member, what do you mean? Well, a family member is pretty extensive. It goes out a pretty good way, right? So a family member, it's the board member's spouse, your children, the spouse of your child, the parents, brothers, sisters, anyone living with you, and anyone that might be serving as your agent. I don't see the agent work very often, but those others, that's pretty extensive, right? So that takes it out pretty far as a family member is concerned. So typically, if you have someone that wants to be employed here in the North Little Rock District and you're on the board, then you would have to resign from the board for them to be considered for that position. The last situation is we want to give a raise to someone that's a family member of a board member. Now, how could that happen? Now, let's just use the situation that happened tonight. You have a new board member with Mr. Taylor, and let's say he already had a son that had been employed here for the last 10 years. Okay, now he's a board member. And you're wanting to give a raise to his son because you're going to move that person from teacher to principal. He's going to get a $10,000 raise. Can you do that? Well, you can, but if it's over a $2,500 increase in compensation, that has to be approved by the Commissioner of Education. So typically what will happen is we'll say we're going to hire that person or move that person or give that person a raise based upon approval of the contract by the Secretary of Education. And then once once the secretary approves it, then it's okay. But certainly you should not be trying to give an increase in pay or an increase in position to a person just because they are, a family member of someone who serves on the board. Yes, ma'am.
If they're getting a raise in a group and it's over 2,500, does it single out a family member?
Yeah, so we had the new increase in pay for everyone based on LEARNS Act, and the Department of Education said, no, we do not want you to send in something for every board member's family member because it is intended for the entire state. We
Okay.
know everyone's going to get a raise.
Okay.
So if it is a group raise, that is going to be everyone, let's say everyone in the district got $5,000, then no.
Okay.
But if it's that one person, or if just a few people get it, but not everyone, then yes. So
Okay.
good question.
All
Very
right.
good question. And those are the three really prohibitions for a board member. You can't contract with the district, you can't hire a family member of yours in the district, and you can't have a raise of over $2,500. Now, some of the same things take place for administrators and employees, and that's what Mr. Brown was talking about, is that your district is taking a really good look at making sure that they understand all the employees have the opportunity to let them know if they own a business. That way they know not to do business with that employee's business as well. So I always say this, if ask yourself the question, could we do business with anyone else other than our employee, our administrator, or our board member? If the answer is yes, then you should do business with somebody else. And I always say that the last thing I would say would be this. What we typically want to look at is, it may pass a rule or a law, and we may be able to slide something through sometimes, but really the biggest test is, what does it look like on the front page of the local newspaper? And if it is not going to bring glory to our district and make us look good, then it was probably the wrong decision. So, some people don't like to hear that sometimes because they say, well, it'd be nice if I could have my family member. It'd be nice if I could contract with somebody. But as long as you can contract with somebody else, you should. So that's the basic one sentence of the whole training. It's as simple as that. So we appreciate the opportunity to be with you. We enjoy the partnership with North Little Rock School District, and know you guys are working hard to do good things for students, and we appreciate being a part of it. Questions?
Very good.
I don't have any other
Of
questions.
course, I'm asking, have we made a mistake during the pandemic? We couldn't find teachers.
Yep.
So there was a sister who had to be hired, but the person always recused themselves.
Yep.
But we got approved, I believe. Was that wrong?
I'm sure you were fine. There's two things there. Number one, there is a provision in this law for an emergency. There's also a provision for an emergency. So if you have an emergency that causes you to do something, then you can check that box and send that in.
Thank you.
And it sounds like during, pandemic, then that would be an emergency.
Right.
Also, there are times, I usually give this example, we're trying to hire certain teachers, maybe in special education field, that kind of thing. We can't find teachers sometimes.
Right.
So sometimes we do go ahead and hire a board member's family member for that position, but that person steps out, that kind of thing. So, no, I don't think you've done anything wrong there in the past, but it sounded like it was an emergency, and you also had those people recruits from the meeting. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks a lot.
Good report.
Thanks, Mr. Rivers.
Thank you.
15 minutes.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, our next information item is 1.2, our calendar options for the 2025-2026 school year. And I'll welcome Mr. Jacob Smith, our Executive Director of Human Resources, for a brief presentation on the work that he's been doing with both the LPPC and CPPC about a calendar for the following school year. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Paluski, Madam President, members of the board. Special welcome to Mr. Taylor. I appreciate you, sir, for joining the board, and I look forward to working with you. So, the topic of conversation this evening is the calendar options for the 25-26 school year. The purpose is to inform the Board of Education and the community of the North Little Rock School District's calendar options for the 25-26 fiscal year. Choices about the type of calendar should be deliberate and enhance learning and achievement both inside and outside of the school building. So, as of the 2022-2023 school years, districts had 4 options that we have at our disposal in regards to the state of Arkansas. We have a traditional school calendar option. We have an alternative school calendar option, which functions under a minute basis. We have a 4-day-a-week school calendar option, and we have a 12-month and year-round school calendar option. So since this implementation, I have done presentations with the board each year, and North Little Rock has remained on a traditional calendar up until now. And so for calendar implementation and regulations, we have different dates, different pieces that we have to do, but a basic teacher contract is at the heart of this, 190 days, and then there is the 178-day student contact requirement under a traditional calendar. So you can see a 6-hour instructional, 6 hours of instructional time per day for an average of 30 hours per week is what makes up a traditional calendar for those 178 student contact days. So if the board will recall our early release calendar that we have this current year, we actually go every day beyond the 6 hours. And so we go 20 minutes beyond the 6 hours daily, which allows us to do an early release once a week at 100 minutes, which is our early release Wednesday. So any full week we have, Monday through Friday, we dismiss on a Wednesday for an early release day. We're able to do this under a traditional calendar because we are allowed to bank time within the given week you find yourself, but you cannot bank time throughout the whole year, which is how a minute or alternative calendar functions. The alternative calendar deals with hours. So 1,068 hours. If you divide that by 6, that's 6 hours of instructional time we discussed in the previous slide, then that would give you your 178 student contact days. And so individuals that bank time, such as us, and don't use it, whenever you divide by that 6, you might actually have less than 178 days that you go. Examples of this are Bryant, Conway, and Little Rock have moved to alternative calendars for this year. That's the model they're currently under, while we're still under a traditional calendar.
And who was that? Sadie and Bryant?
Yes, ma'am. It's right at the bottom. It's Conway, Bryant, and Little Rock are all under a alternative calendar. In fact, I believe Conway, if my memory serves me correct, only goes 168 days this year because they were able to bank that time and they chose to use that at the end of the year and have less student contact days. So we have been exploring this within the LPPC and CPPC for the past couple years, and we do feel like we would like to move to an alternative school calendar this year. And so if the board will allow me a little grace, I'm just going to kind of walk everybody through the nuances, but there is an earlier start date associated with this calendar. Normally, the state law only allows you to start the Monday 2 weeks prior to the September 1st holiday. And so now that law, according to Hope Worsham, has been eradicated as of this year. And so under an alternative calendar, we have the ability to apply for an earlier start date even without a waiver request. And so individuals no longer have to go through that process of requesting a waiver. So we would start basically a week early, which is not uncommon. There are a couple districts around the state that did that this year. And so our requested start date would be the 11th, and everything before that looks fairly similar as far as work day, PD days, new teacher orientation. If you continue on, this option 1, if you'll notice that no school day after parent-teacher conferences, so the request of, the discussion that transpired in the calendar committee and the request of the individuals whenever we decided they want to do a staggered parent-teacher conference again, so both calendars have a 12 to 6 option. It's a 6-hour day, but that kind of allows us to capture the parents that can come during the day and allows us the ones that can come during the evening, with a no school day following the parent-teacher conference day. The purple days are what is
Hang
new.
on, Mr. Smith. I would just want to clarify. You were just referring to October 16th and 17th, correct?
Correct, sir.
Okay. Just want to make sure everybody knew where he was talking about.
Absolutely. So you'll see we still have early release all embedded throughout this, but we have our purple PD days, which are on October 31st, Halloween, and January 6th, which is the day that we would return, it'd be the second day back. There'd be a work day, and then there would be a district-wide PD day. Under this recommended calendar, there's 176 student contact days, and that is because of the bank time. So if the board will notice as well, next to student contact days, there's a new column that I have student minutes. And so that is all the minutes added up, which gives us that grand total of 64,080 minutes, which if you divide that by 60, that gives you the 1,068 hours exactly. I also provided a document to the board that shows the banked time under option 1 and option 2. That is how we get those 2 purple days. That is the 2 days saved over the course of the entire year. And so that is how we are allowed to have 2 less student contact days under this calendar and still meet all of the criteria associated with a 6-hour, 178-day calendar.
Can I ask a question about those?
Of course.
So hypothetically, it snows. Would those 2 days be possible makeup days?
Yes, ma'am. So under an alternative calendar, if you will recall, with the snow last year, we were on a traditional, and then we applied for a waiver to go to an alternative. And then the board, in conjunction with Dr. Paluski, we used early release for the rest of the year in order to make up that time that was missed during that period, so we did not have to extend our school year. Under this model, you can do the same thing.
Okay.
We have the ability at any time to pivot, is what I'm trying to say. So if we needed to use the purple days, if we needed to use the orange early release time, all of that would be an option that we're already under because we're just trying to meet that minute requirement.
And you don't have to go to the state for that.
No, ma'am, we would not.
Help me out.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Smith. Now, so I can understand. I'll go to November. So the green is for PD days, right?
No, ma'am. The green is no school days, so only 12-month contracted individuals work those days.
Okay. And the blue?
The blue is a closed day. Everybody is off. And the red is a holiday, which is defined by our policies.
So it's still like a whole week. A school will be out for a whole week.
Yes, ma'am. School would be out for most. And I mean, school would be out. Schools would be closed for kids and pretty much all staff members. The 12-month principals would be on contract on the green days, and any other 12-month employees, maintenance, administration, any of those individuals.
Okay. It's an option for people who are on the 245 days, but otherwise the teachers, students would be out of school.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So
Smart.
one of the beautiful things about this calendar and starting a week early is it allows us to balance our semesters, which has been issues in the past. We're very, very close now, as opposed to one semester being 80 days around about, just barely getting it in because it's 40 to 50 days for each 9 weeks. Now we're floating right around that 45 to 47 for each semester. And so it's really a good thing. It's going to allow those semester-based classes at the secondary level to be balanced so that one group's not getting more than the other and things of that nature. This also gets us out by the May 3-day weekend as well under this current model. And so I think there's some excitement, even though it might be 1 year of a shortened summer, but this being the model going forward, we're kind of resetting the deck so that we can continue with those dates in mind. Option 2, the biggest nuance with this is that in October and February, you will see those no school days were removed after the parent-teacher conferences, and those parent-teacher conferences would still be noon to 6 on Friday instead of Thursday, and the no school days were moved to November. AEA, the conference, is that week, and so the 6th and the 7th are always days at which individuals would like to attend, and so that was put out to the staff for a vote, as those being the two options. Option 1, the no school days right after the parent-teacher conferences. Option 2, the no school days, both embedded in November. Still purple days the same, still start and end dates the same, all of those things. We brought this to the calendar, the committee, to the PPCs. The way this was passed is that we all voted, both committees voted, that we would put this out for a staff vote. Whatever calendar rose to the top from the staff would be the one that we recommend to the board. And so these are the results from that survey. And so you can see that 477 individuals responded, with the breakdown being 66% of those responses certified and 34% being classified. And option 1, with the no school days being after the parent-teacher conference days, was the option that won. So this option right here.
Thank you.
And the next slide would be my question slide, but I think I'll leave this up for reference in case anybody has any questions.
I do. Coming back to, doesn't matter, option 1 or option 2, we'll use option 1. There's an asterisk, May 22nd. Would that be the last day of school? Because the 25th is a holiday, the 26th, 27th, 28th, and 29th is inclement weather, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that means we need to be proactive now for graduation date for following year. That means we need to either hire, rent, figure out something for graduation.
That was a
Just want to make
distinct.
sure that is out there in the universe.
Yes,
Says
ma'am.
the mom of a senior.
That was a distinct
Okay.
discussion amongst exec team. I believe it was Mr. Barnes that said graduation's going to happen quite early this year.
Which would be the preference of the people of the senior year committee. I am one of those as well.
Absolutely.
So, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so just wanted to verify that. Also come back to, give me 1 second because I've already lost my train of thought with it.
Can I add one thing while
Go
you're?
ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So the purple days as well, there's an asterisk,
Yeah.
and I did not, in the snippet that I took, I just want to make sure the board is aware. That is a K through 12 PD day. It does not mean that we will not include our pre-K staff, but there are different rules and regulations associated with pre-K. They are not allowed to be on an alternative calendar. So pre-K will have to be open those days, but what we do in regards to the professional development amongst that staff, that has not been decided. We just have to have that as an open day for funding. And so individuals like Conway, I reached out. They're on a 168-day calendar with students, K through 12. On those 10 days that K through 12 staff are PDing and doing stuff like that, the pre-K is open as regularly scheduled, because that is its own governance, that is its own funding source through ABC.
Okay, very good. Good clarification.
So you up at, you got all the state mandated days in?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So just for clarification, the NTO is new teacher orientation for August 1st, and that stays the same on both calendars
Yes, ma'am.
before we get into PD.
August 1st and July 31st.
Oh, yeah, okay, good job, because I didn't catch that one.
Last day of school is?
May 22nd on both calendars, ma'am.
Boy, it seems like taking your vacation in August.
Okay, come back to November 6th and 7th between calendar 1 and calendar 2.
Yes, ma'am.
I understand the popular vote was for option 1, which is fine. I'm good with that. If that's what my teachers want, that is what they will receive from me. On November 6th and 7th, though, so was there not a large population that wanted to attend the AEA?
I didn't collect data like that.
Okay.
I just know that it rose to the top. I think it's important for the board to know that in regards to professional development with AEA and things of that nature, We leave it, the way our policy is worded is we leave it up to the building administrator to make the decision as far as yay or nay. One thing that we do have to consider, though, is that either we put it out to our staff that we're only going to allow a certain number because it cannot interrupt daily operations
There you
if it's
have
not
the next
embedded in
question.
our calendar, and so we leave that to the discretion of the principals. We have had situations to where there's only a couple individuals that want to go, so it's not an issue. There have been other instances where principals have had to say no campus-wide because there would be such an influx of individuals out.
Okay, very good.
Question on it. This year they only had 1 day for that. So down here, what, you have 2 days now?
Yes, ma'am. So it goes both days, but where there was only the ability under the traditional calendar to offer one, with the other ways the no school days were spread out.
Okay. All right, so this time they get an option of 2 days
Yes, ma'am.
and no other one. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes,
In
ma'am.
the past, it seemed like all of the schools in Pulaski County kind of had the same schedule, or they seemed to. I don't know if that was planned or not. Does anybody know?
Well, spring break is mandated, so that has to be the same. And then prior to the law, so Act 1122 is no longer, so we can start school August 11th, because then start and finish was mandated by law also, along with spring break. So if start and finish has changed and gone away, then we won't need a waiver for this, is what you were stating?
I believe it was just start was the only thing that was mandated, but
Okay.
that law was altered so that I can't tell you. I just reached out to Miss Worsham, Hope Worsham at the State Department, and she said it was not an issue under an alternative calendar. I can't speak to if it's an issue under a traditional calendar, but we're not asking the board to be under that model.
Those
Well, it just seems that in years past, the districts somehow coordinated and had some similar things, similar days that they were off. And
Yes, ma'am.
I can see now that's not going to happen because everybody's going to be doing their own. Each school district is going to be doing their own calendar that they want.
Yes, ma'am, and we're pretty close, but I mean, for example, I don't believe Conway or Little Rock have given the past year a full 2 weeks for Christmas. Our staff has made it abundantly clear they want the full 2 weeks for Christmas, even if we have to go a little longer. I mean, those things, and so whether they go for a Monday, Tuesday, things like that, our staff it's a hard no. And so that was the most important thing. If the board will recall, whenever we sent what were your priorities, having a full week at Thanksgiving, having a full 2 weeks at Christmas was right there at the top.
I could be wrong, but I think the main concern wasn't the start date and end date, it was spring break. Trying to keep everybody on spring break the same so that families can
Maybe that was it.
make
yes.
schedules.
And spring break is set every year by the AAA. It's like the 39th week of school, or excuse me, the 39th week of the year, and they start July 1 and you start counting. And we all have the same spring break.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So, hey, explain Christmas for me.
Yes, ma'am.
On option 1 that they chose. Look at the calendar and tell me when to get out. I'm trying to
Yes,
plan my holidays right.
Yes, ma'am. So all staff that are non-12-month employees would be off December 22nd, and they would return January 5th. That would be a work day with no students. Then the 6th is that additional PD day. So pre-K would be in session on the 6th, but K through 12 would not. And all students would return on the 7th. As far as 12-month staff, Ms. Williams, 12-month staff would work the 22nd of December, the 23rd of December, and the 2nd of January if they choose not to take some other form of leave.
Okay. Thank you. 2 weeks vacation.
Yes, ma'am.
And I do want to add and I know this has been something we've worked towards, but you'll notice that on the 19th, that ends clean the semester. And there's been years where we've had to go, have a break, then come back, have final exams, and it just was wonky for a lot of reasons. So I know that from the high school side that that's been clean on the 19th, and then we come back and start second semester, third quarter fresh. So I do applaud. There's been a lot of work to try to get that to balance correctly.
All right. Well, I have one question. We're about to go over attendance, and I don't know exactly when someone's considered tardy on a regular workday, but if we're counting minutes, how does that impact our students and them coming 3 minutes late to school? I mean, I'm just kind of wondering how this impact the actual student day.
I don't have that answer for you, ma'am. I'd have to research it or reach beyond my expertise, and I could put that in the weekly board report, but I don't have a clarity on that.
Okay. All right.
Talking about staff being,
No, I know how this is for
Students.
staff. I'm just talking about
Tardy,
students. I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't remember when they're considered tardy right now. I mean, I'm thinking that they probably have 5 minutes or something before they're considered tardy. But if we're counting minutes of the day, then if they're 5 minutes late, is that 5 minutes that they're, I mean, I'm just wondering how that impacts our students if we're counting minutes. Yes, and
I bet we're gonna find that out at
Well,
the
I'm
next
asking.
presentation.
I'm asking.
Dr. St. Louis.
So-
she got
I
a-
see her hand up.
Dr. St. Louis.
our student handbook policy, I don't believe it would change if they are 30 minutes late to school or actually considered absent. That's the policy that's written in our student handbook, so I don't believe the impact would change, but unless we changed, we would change it in our handbook. We would have to change it in our handbook.
That would have to be a policy change.
Okay.
But I think this is probably a good segue into talking about attendance and talking about discipline, but because remember, this is also our first full year that we've done early release. Last year, we didn't go off as well as we started. Then we had to stop it because of the snow. And I was pleased, as we've been out to talk to schools, that I think teachers are settling into early release Wednesdays. Our families are getting used to it. They're starting to see the value of it. So I was glad to see that they're going to stick with that option as we go forward.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
we'll come back, Mr. Smith, at our next one for the recommendation to adopt that based upon the recommendation from LPPC and CPPC.
Absolutely.
And I do have one more, just because it came to my mind. Someone brought to my attention that if the schools were looking at state, I don't know what you call that, that they may not be able to have this calendar. So do we have a backup plan in case for some reason we're not allowed to do this?
I've thought about that. If for some reason the legislature makes an adjustment where they take away some of the options and the alternative calendar is one, then it would be my recommendation to the board that we just pivot the PD days to school days, and that gets us right back up to 178. The purple days would just be converted,
Okay.
and then we would be under a similar calendar as we were this year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a good question.
You're welcome.
Okay, our last information item is 1.3. This is the elementary and secondary first quarter attendance and discipline data. And as you know, I'll welcome our colleagues, Dr. Lightfoot, our Executive Director of Elementary School Performance, Dr. Leanne Stoll, our Executive Director of Special Services and Secondary School Performance, and Ms. Kathy Hale, Coordinator of Student Data and Supervisor of School Counseling. As you recall, each year we go back and we try to, where are we as looking at first quarter attendance and looking at our data, what's working, what's not working, and how do we proceed. So I'll turn it over to my colleagues.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Polisky, thank you so much for having us tonight. I'll first, before we start, want to say a big thank you to the woman to my left, Ms. Kathy Hale, because she pulled all this data together and worked with these two individuals, which was a little bit trying task for her to get us to pull all this together, so I appreciate her. I also wanted to recognize our principals that came at our request out in the audience in case you have specific questions that we can't answer, so they can come up and answer those for you. So I just wanted to recognize them before we get started. And the purpose of this presentation is to inform our stakeholders in the district about our first quarter attendance and discipline for the 24-25 school year. And I just wanted to we have a note in here to let you know that we've worked really hard on calibrating with our schools, because last year when this presentation was brought to you, there were some things that people were coding different ways. We weren't very uniform. We still have some work to do in that area, but it has gotten a lot better and a lot more uniform. So as we move into the presentation, you'll see a little bit cleaner data this year. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Lightfoot, to go into elementary.
All right, the first one that we want to highlight our attendance, and we want to present it to you in a 4-year trend. And if you look at the blue line would represent our attendance data in 2022. And if you noticed, going to 2025, that the orange line, we've got an increase. If you see, it's marked, and it generally, our schools from 2022 to 2025, on average, increased about 3 percentage points. And that's some progress. They've held, they got up there at 2024, and then kind of held around there in 2025. You could see Amboy, Boone Park, increase about 3 points, Meadow Park. But you see there was a significant rise from Ridge Road from 90% to 95.4. When we present this data, many times we don't talk about, though, the things that are intentionally occurring to impact this data. And of course, that attendance piece, I think you touched on that earlier, as far as being there, and we would often say winners get to school on time. To be present and get those instructional minutes are important. And so to get our children in the seats, there's a lot of work that's done in schools to incentivize them being present. Our work through Crystal Barker, we really thank her for her support and work through our PEPs, and that is our NEAT students, and we celebrate them. You'll see the boards when maybe you go to the luncheons. It is neat. It is great to be a NEAT student, and they celebrate them all the time. NEAT means never, ever absent or tardy. So these are just some celebrations that they do, maybe a perfect attendance party. They give them certificates. Just celebrations about being present is really, I think, helped that attendance data. Our next is elementary discipline. The first graph shows fighting in elementary school from 2022 to present. If you notice in the yellow, that is 2022, and then we surged, particularly as you see Ridge Road was very, very high in 23, 7th Street, very high. And then go back to 2024, the change. Ridge Road came down significantly, 7th Street came down significantly. You saw some peaks in Crestwood, but in that case, we're not really sure if it's that increased, but maybe that how we were approaching that behavior and coding it in the system. So that's part of that ongoing work that we need to take care of.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
On the
ma'am.
attendance, you have 4 different points there, 22, 23, 24, and 25. And now in the attendance, we've got 22, 23, 24.
So, yeah, I think just to jump in there, when we put that data together, so when you see gold is 25, that's referring to the 24-25 school
I
year.
was gonna ask
So 21, 22, 22, 23, it's the ending date is what that
Okay.
trend is showing.
Okay. Graduation date.
Graduation year.
Graduation.
It's the graduation year that you use.
As far as the software is concerned, anytime that we run a report, it's run based upon the graduation year. So when we're running attendance, it would be on the 2025 year, even though we're not in 25 yet. It's the graduation year. And then when she's got on her discipline and she has those, we ran the discipline for quarter. So first quarter happened in 2024.
Gotcha.
So that's the discrepancy there.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question.
I heard that.
So when we're looking at the first quarter disruptive behavior would be classified as all those behaviors that requires that you move into level 2 infractions. Level 1 would be all those behavior infractions that happen in the classroom. That is the teacher-managed classroom behaviors, and that would the teacher will get involved with the infractions that happen there. But if it escalates to repeated level 1 behaviors, or that has become significantly disrupts the instructional environment or event or activity or transportation, it will be classified as disruptive behavior. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's 2425 Ridge Road. Okay, when I was looking at this data, what I have to look at and be reasonable about the enrollment, Ms. Hill, the large enrollment at that school.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what's the enrollment?
Ridge Road currently today has 518 students.
Okay. That to me, when I can look at maybe 7th Street, Horn ahead.
7th Street's current enrollment is 269.
Right. And so I wanted the board to be cognitive of that, that it's not necessarily out of place, but it's the difference when you're comparing and looking at different schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't know if at this point, if you wanted to make a comment about this, Mr. Howe, is there anything about your disruptive data that you find important to note?
Come on up, Mr. Howe.
While he's coming up, also to be factored in that was the coding. The coding was different than it was before. Okay. Okay.
So part of this, yes, we actually coded things in different categories last year, but we went ahead and decided disruptive behavior was encompassing quite a few of those things that we were coding in different areas last year. So that's part of it. We've also got some students who are repeat offenders that we had some significant issues with that we were dealing with. Students that were showing some extreme behaviors that were disrupting the environment, not only in the classroom but throughout the school, and so providing support for those students as well. And so that's some of the data that you're also seeing there.
I think that Ms. Hill pulled for us that it was out of your 77, it was 16 of those are repeated.
Repeat offenders. And some of those students have been provided a learning environment now that is more suitable to their needs.
Okay, and then Mr. Howell, since you're there, as I heard her say that, how many of those were repeaters?
16.
Okay, and having those numbers repeaters, what kind of referrals are you using to help these students?
Yes, ma'am. So we have several different options on our campus for counseling services. We have different groups that meet with our students, so we provide those services. We also had the counselor at the time. She's no longer with us. She was supporting the students as well. We have the dean of students who is supporting those students with plans in the classroom with the teachers, working with the teachers on how to best support those students. We've also got just the PBIS system that we're using in the building to try and support those students, but working with the families in terms of how we can best meet their needs.
I could also say, though, in that regard, we've also been working together on this ripple effects that we've taken, that we really need to use more work, which is a great piece that deals with individual type of issues where you see with repeated offenders. They're having a hard time settling conflict peaceably or collaborating, how to work with other students, or just some of us have social-emotional issues that they need another tier of support. And that's one that we really been working with our counselors or other places in the school, like our ISS, that they can engage in this ripple effects, and that will help them teach them to have more proactive behavior when they feel that they're becoming or feeling themselves becoming unmanaged, that they need to get back to a place that they can make responsible decisions.
Thank you.
Okay, well, while you're here,
Yes,
can
ma'am.
you tell me what happened last year that the fights increased and you were able to keep them down this year? What's different between the 2 years?
We actually saw quite a few, we had quite a few aggressive students that came to us with aggressive behavior last year. Plus, coupled last year, to be honest, we also had some teachers who are no longer with us that were having difficulty with classroom management, and so we were having fights inside the classroom as well. So we were also dealing with that. We don't have as much the aggressive behavior this year. I mean, we still have incidents, but not like we saw last year where students were physical with each other. What we're seeing this year is more of the emotional behaviors of students who are having a significant issue just being in the classroom and being able to focus and not distracting the students with extreme behaviors that they're exhibiting.
Okay.
And your Dean of Students, which would be new this year, was a significant help to your campus.
Huge help, yes, and she stays busy, but she's doing that, Bob, and she's also supporting teachers as well, so she's doing a fabulous job.
Who also came out of our Aspiring Leaders Academy, by the way. Sorry, just a plug.
Yay.
Yes, she did.
Okay, moving right along.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howe.
So when you take a look at elementary total incidents, this is our data from 2022 to 2024.
Okay.
And the orange indicates our 2024 data. And you really see to me, a trend where total incidents are generally are reducing. And I think that is a real celebration. And so when we look at that data, then we ask, why is it that, or what is it that we're doing that makes a difference? And I would say that it would be our PBIS systems. And I want to thank Heather Rhodes that really works with us. Our schools and our leaders have really gotten so creative with employing this system and going to the training that's been offered to do school-wide systems. When we say PBIS, it's about being preventive. It's a positive behavioral intervention support that helps the whole school climate to encourage students to make the right decisions and do the right thing, and then you celebrate that. We also want to speak to our counselors and PEPs that work with a lot of our students that need some extra love and some extra support in making those kind of decisions because they struggle with some other issues that interfere with them receiving their education. And it takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of skill to work with our students, and our principals are coming quite adept at that as well, so that they can get right back in and receive the instruction and not be outside of the class. And that could be learning.
Okay, we're going to move into secondary now, and the first piece we're going to discuss is attendance. And the 2025 attendance line is the blue line when you look on this, which is, again, the 24-25 school year. And I think we have a lot to celebrate here. If you look at that, all of our schools increased, and they are all above that 95% area. And that's largely due to these wonderful principals sitting behind me, their PEPs, their home visits, their phone calls. They have worked extremely hard to make sure our students are there and they're learning. So we're really proud of that attendance piece and how far we've come. And just some of the reasons for our attendance increasing, one thing I really want to highlight at the high school, our academies of Central Arkansas, the big push we've done for that, that's making students excited about their pathways and excited about coming to school. So I think that's really great. And they're talking about those academies all the way down at middle school. So I think that's really helped with our attendance as well. Then I want to move on to our discipline. And the first one is our number of fights. And Ms. Williams asked me a couple of questions before the board meeting started, and Ms. Hale, in her wonderful, ingenious computer, was able to find me answers to those. So at 7th and 8th grade campus, you'll notice that the gray bars are this school year. Their fights have increased quite a bit. I do want you to know that 14 of those are repeat offenders, 7 being boys, 7 being girls. 12 of those are African American students, 1 Hispanic student, and 1 that's 2 or more races. I also want you to know in all of those campuses, our ALE numbers are incorporated in that, so the academy discipline is a part of that because they're under that same LEA number, so those aren't pulled out of there. That does also include the academy, so that might be helpful.
And Ms. Hale, could you rattle off the current enrollment at 7th and 8th grade campus? Just so
Yes.
that puts us in perspective as well to
Yes, sir.
Ms. Williams.
1,037
Thank you.
Oh,
at the
Ms.
7A
Hill,
campus, yes, ma'am.
is this data correct on the COE? Because I recall a fight of something being held this year.
Yes, ma'am. The answer I'm going to give to you is that our data is only as good as what's put into the computer.
Okay.
Okay.
If it's given to you.
Whatever's put into the software, I can report to you on.
Right, but if it's not given, you can't put that on.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, I know it's that's why I was saying it looked too perfect for me. I know there's something that had happened,
So,
but it's
yeah,
not
I mean,
your
Dr. St.
fault.
Louis is here. I mean, she's, would you like to?
Come up and speak in the microphone so everybody can hear you.
Well, good evening, everyone. I was just going to also share that sometimes some of our fighting incidents can be quite violent, and they're not always listed as fighting. You know, it could be terroristic threatening. It could be extreme disruption if police have to get involved. And so if you're just looking at the code of fighting, there are other situations where if it's several students who are involved in some of our fights, it may be coded differently just based off of the extreme nature of the situation.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
So smart.
Don't leave yet.
Don't go away.
Okay. My question, and I guess it's not singled towards you, but last year we put in a no tolerance on fighting, and fighting went down dramatically. This year we have the same no tolerance, but fighting went up quite a bit. Are we doing something different in the way we enforce our no tolerance? I mean, is there something different there that in our enforcement of the no tolerance that's causing the increase?
If I can just speak frankly, and I mean, I'd love for my colleagues to speak as well from our experiences as principals.
Sure.
We have a process where students go before a change of placement hearing. Several of those students have been sent back to school, and that has been difficult for us if a student, the message is not consistent with the behavior.
Okay.
And so I will speak for my campus. It has, caused a lot of issues. Now, I sent an email to the students and I said, we're taking a hard stance on this. And I just did that as a building principal because I felt like our building was starting to lose control. And we haven't had a fight since then, and that's probably been about 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
But I think the intention was there, but starting with the change of placement, there was just a lot of inconsistencies. But again, I'm just speaking for myself. I don't know what my colleagues would say for their own experiences, but that's how it's been.
Okay, well, that's what I heard. That's why I was asking. So you guys experienced the same thing?
Come on up.
Well,
Can you state your name, both for the record?
Ms. Kelly, where you going? Can I ask a question, Madam Chair, were you through?
Well, I think
Well-
they wanted to, that both these
Respond
principals
to-
wanted to respond to Ms. Temple's question, if
Oh, yeah,
that's,
go ahead.
Okay, all right.
That's what I'm saying.
go ahead.
good evening. I will echo what Dr. St. Louis stated in that some of our students have been returned to campus after going through the change of placement process. For our campus, I can't speak for sixth grade and high school. For our campus, there was a little pushback for our campus in terms of even sending kids to the change of placement in the first place. So we had students who just received a suspension instead of actually going to the change of placement conference because we had been receiving some pushback for sending so many students to change of placement. That has been rectified, and we have made a similar announcement on the 7th and 8th grade campus, and I will echo what Dr. St. Louis has said, that since we've made that announcement, we have not had fights on our campus.
Good evening, Michael Clark, sixth grade principal. With our campus, we handle the fighting just a little bit differently because we do understand that they are sixth graders just coming in from elementary. If it is, I'll say, a minor fight where, like if they're outside on recess and they're playing basketball, they get mad at each other and it's just a spur of the moment fight, we look at that as a unique situation, and we will not put them up for change of placement. They do go through a suspension. So we try to take that first fight with some of our sixth graders as a learning curve, and if a second fight occurs, that's when they go to change of placement. If it is a major fight like we have had before this year, it is an automatic change of placement. So we try to take each case one by one on it.
Okay. But the change of placement problem has been rectified. You're not having that problem anymore.
Well, we're not sending kids a change of placement because they're not making bad decisions, honestly. Like, a lot of our students, when I sent the email to our students and our staff about, you know, the tolerance with fighting and how, you know, it's impacting our culture and learning, and I'm like, you're just not going to come back. You know, students said, oh, she's not playing. And they're like, okay, well, I've got conflict. They're trying to resolve their conflicts using other means.
Okay.
Because our students want to stay in school. But if they just feel like it's a slap on the wrist, and they would rather risk that and get in a fight and then come back versus being like, oh, well, you know, I really want to be here. So I do think it's helped. But we haven't had to send us any students to change of placement. We had one student this week, and that was from all the campuses.
Okay.
And I did want to speak to that for the Change of Placement Committee. We have principals, check and connects, roundtables, all kinds of things all the time. So since I've come into this role, that's been a theme, that they were worried about kids getting sent back. So we had Miss Randall come to our principals meeting. We've talked with her and kind of had a reset about, because she heads up Change of Placement, to have a reset so that we're all on the same page so that we can get back to that strict no tolerance, the rule you passed last year. And then all the buildings did a reset in their buildings and sent emails out. So I think that we have that cleared up now. And moving forward, you know, we're taking that big, strong stance again.
Okay. All right.
Well, the
Thank
question I got, I heard you say, Dr. St. Louis, that it's not always consistent. So I know that you are in charge of the school, but you have people that's working under you. It's somewhere it's falling down, lack of communications or something. I'm trying to hear what you said to get a clarity on it. Dr.
I think that
St.
when I say
Louis.
the lack of consistency is sometimes the change of, well, sometimes it's one, it is getting to kids to the change of placement. So what we do on the school level is if a fight occurs, we first do an incident assessment to see, are we even going to refer them? Because some of our students, some fights have caused such extreme disruption, it's automatically we might recommend them for an expulsion. Some situation, it might just be something very silly, quick, and petty, and we say those students will be suspended. So as a school level team, which includes an administrator, might be a dean of students, might be a teacher or two, they make that first decision, and then they go before. Most of our students will go before change of placement. When they get to that change of placement hearing, there's multiple people from the district, and then there is an administrator from the school who's present, as well as the parents. And they're looking at whatever facts we provide from that interview process. So based off of the hearing committee, they may determine the students going to ALE, they're going virtual, they're going back to school. So we have had a significant number of students who have come back to our school based off of the finding of the facts that we've presented. And it might be also the student may have a situation where they've not been in trouble. But I've told our students, you can be a straight A student, but if you come in this building and you are so disrupting to the school culture, that's a problem for me. Because that's how it's been on our campus. When we have fights that are happening, it disrupts the learning environment. So I'm glad that you're making straight A's, but now you might have to make straight A's virtually. And so when we're saying it's not, when I'm saying it's not consistent, sometimes it could be on the school end in terms of following this incident assessment, and sometimes with the change of placement, not every kid is being sent, you know, to a different place. Several of them are being sent back to school.
Well, see, I thought our policy stated if you fight, you go home. And then it seemed like I'm hearing we're giving them second chances. And that's why, and when you give second chances, it's accumulation. It's like things are happening, and I'm not saying, I guess I'm talking to all of you all. I'm just looking at Dr. St. Louis, since she was so profound in her speech. What I'm saying is, our board said, policy, if you fight, you're out. And then we keep hearing it as board members, you are patting them on the back and sending them on back. When You cannot do that. If they're wrong, they're wrong. And then, like, when I see these fights happen, you know how they fight? They start cursing. They say on these campuses, 7th and 8th grade campuses, they can curse like sailors. And then they start fighting. You have to stop it. All of you, you got the best mechanism in the world. Got that good television thing up there, Dr. Sloan. You got the good, best mic. All of you all got communication. Some kind of way you all need to develop in communicating with your students. We keep hearing things. And Dr. St. Louis, and I know you and you from your school, it hurt our hearts week before last when we had to put students out.
Especially
and
those.
These were A students.
A students not in trouble.
All
that
of them
hurts.
A students. So you think about what can you do? Board set the policy, but they're not being followed. That's my mindset. And if I'm wrong, board, that's what I see. That's what I hear.
May I ask, are you finished?
I'm through, darling.
I just want to make sure before I jump in. Can you help me, any of you, explain the change of placement? I've heard the word change of placement. So what exactly does that look like? Who makes up, I guess, is it a committee?
Yeah, it's
Is
a
it
committee of different
room full?
individuals. I'll let Dr. Stoll speak to the
So,
actual individuals.
it is headed up by Tiffany Randall.
Okay.
And then Mr. Williams is on that committee in case there's an ALE placement.
Okay.
Dr. Reynolds is on that committee in case there's a virtual placement. And then
Chief Finks.
Chief Finks or someone from Safety and Security is on there in case we need to look at video. And then the school administrator, someone from the school that's recommended them, is on that committee. And the committee makes the decision.
Okay, so effectively, if I get into a fight, if I'm a student, I get into a fight, you did your findings, whoever did your findings, and you recommend me for change of placement.
Correct.
And then within that meeting, you decide if
I don't really feel like the schools decide.
The committee
hearing-
decides.
Yeah.
And the parents come and the students come and they get to present their side of the case, and then the administration is there to present their side of the case, and then they come together collectively and they decide if they need an alternate placement to ALE or virtual. Sometimes the problem also is if you have 10 students in a fight, you can't send all 10 of them to ALE because you're going to have the
Then you
same
have
problem
repeat
there.
situations,
And we
yeah.
only have two options, which is virtual and ALE at this point, and virtual gets full. We are exploring as a secondary team some other options for Twilight School. We hope to be able to bring to y'all.
Okay.
Because we do need some other placements because it gets really full, and there's no spots. So that is also a problem as well, putting all the students in one placement or not having enough placements. But that does come up as well.
That's a fair assessment. So kind of echoing back to what Dorothy was stating. So we do have a policy,
Right.
fighting, you're out. We all felt that away, with the exception of Mr. Taylor, because he's new with us. But we all felt, if you had a fight, if you fought, you're out. And then we had some extreme situations come before us a few weeks ago that some of our adults got hurt. So
Correct.
then all of us are just fuming red mad that our teachers,
That's
our
right.
administrators were hurt in a process that should have never happened. So now we're frustrated again because we set the policy last year
Right.
for this not to happen, and then I'm hearing your feedback, so thank you for that our policy wasn't followed, and we board members want to make sure if we need to do something better, if we need to change something, if we need to support you more so in something, please tell us now. Did we mess up? Did we not follow our own policy? Or was it, not to be disrespectful, but was it that change of placement situation that messed the things up of the powers of be? We just want to make sure we follow our own policy. Dorothy, we all know Dorothy is very adamant. We set policy and we follow policy. We had those extreme situations a few weeks ago. We all saw red. That was a very difficult night. And we are just upset that our own family members, our own NLRSD family members, got hurt in this situation. So if you fight, you're out. We're back to that. Right now, we don't care about the circumstances, you're out. If you throw a punch, you're out. Would you agree, ladies? And Ms. Falcon, that's just where we are with the situation because our family got hurt. And we
I'm
don't
so
like that.
glad you're saying that publicly tonight too for our parents that are watching, because we get a lot of pushback. Talk to a parent today, get a lot of pushback. Look, my child's only been in one fight. How are you, why are you sending them to another placement? We get lots of calls about that. And so I'm really glad to hear you guys reiterate that tonight, because I need our parents and our public to hear that we are sticking to that.
So remember what the policy says, and we all took a hard stance on that. But the policy does say you may have an immediate change of placement, and that goes back to the decision that we want to give to our administrators. I've been in each one of their buildings and had personal conversations with them that, look, just like Mr. Clark said, in his situation, they may have a change of placement. He's trying to teach them. It might not be appropriate for a change of placement given what those circumstances are. But it might be a change of placement in her situation given the severity of it. And I've had a conversation with all of them that we're not going to tolerate it. And you need to use this process and improve. I have heard from our administrators as well. There was some issues, I think, with the change of placement, and I think it's gotten better. Obviously, we've had a lot more expulsions, and I've been very clear with them and everybody else. We're not going to tolerate any adult in this school district that teaches for us to be assaulted by anyone, whether that's another child or whether that's by another adult. We're not going to tolerate it. Our teachers need to teach, period. And they need to be in a safe environment and be able to do that. The other thing I'm very adamant about is you've seen them. If you're going to threaten to shoot up the school, if you're going to threaten to shoot somebody else, we're not going to tolerate that either, because we live in a day and age where that's not a joke. No. And fighting's not going to be tolerated. A threat to shoot up a school is not going to be tolerated. And we certainly can't assault our employees. That's just the bottom line. And I appreciate all of your support, but I want to reiterate what the policy says that gives them some flexibility and autonomy to make decisions. But when they make those decisions and make recommendations to the committee, it is to look at the whole child as well.
And I have had conversations with my staff, just because I'm not in every change of placement, because I'd love to go hard body karate every time, because I'm telling you, like, I see what happens in my school building. We're here to teach our students, and teaching and learning is our focus, and keeping our students in our school safe. So I have other administrators who represent the school. And so, I've had to have conversations with them about, guys, you've got to be consistent. I know it's hard. You got the parents in there, and we're crying, and I'm like, you got to stand strong. But I think moving forward,
it's true.
Going into the next school year, we have to take a hard stance on some of our policies. Like, we can't, when it comes to whether it's tardies or anything, attendance, behavior, we have to start the school year. And that's been a struggle for us as principals when we're having to pivot in the middle of the year to adjust to what's happening in our school buildings. That's difficult. And that happened. This is my 4th year, and that's happened every year. We're having to pivot based off of our circumstances. And I would love to just start the school year already with plans in place to address some of our major issues, which are honestly what we're presenting today. It's attendance and behavior.
I'll apologize.
No, go ahead.
She was talking.
Well, I just wanted to jump in there, because even us as a board, when they get before us, it breaks our hearts, and we struggle. There's time like we made this policy, and we're like, I don't want to apply it right now. It's hard, and it's really hard.
You got to send a message.
But that's the bottom line. Every single time that we've ever vacillated, it was a mistake. It turned out to be a mistake. Policy's best because it's consistency wins the game.
That's right.
Every time. You don't teach anybody anything without consistency. So I know how hard it is. It's hard.
And I think if we were able to if we started August 19th where we are now, our numbers wouldn't be where they are. Honestly, if we would have said, you fight, nope. But, it was just kind of like, okay, chances, change place, whatever the circumstances, we may have been on the school. So students, they're going to pick up on that.
They do.
They pick up on that, and so they're like, oh, I can just go and, watch Bluey and come back to school, whatever they choose to do. you know, there's, the consequence doesn't stick for a lot of our students.
Yeah.
That's the St. Louis. You're in charge of your building. Okay, I noticed you do have a lot of security because we provided that for you. How many assistants do you have, like assistant principals, or they call them dean of students now? How many of those do you have?
I have 6 and 6.
6. Would you break them up for me and tell them?
6 assistant principals and 6 dean of students.
Which aligns with the 6 academies.
Okay. Are you over those people?
I am.
Okay. I guess the board need to bring them in because you telling us, you know it has been inconsistency.
Now, I want it to be noted that this year, I have 6 assistant principals, and I only have one of those administrators who's been with me since I started.
Okay.
So I'm trying to build capacity. Remember, I got 2 schools. So you're trying to build capacity, change the culture of your school, grow your leaders. Everything's not going to be able to start how it's been. So it's a learning process for us as a team. And we have conversation, and these are learning moments for us too, where it's just like, guys, we've got to be, because I can't handhold, I can't come with you to every change of placement to make sure we're on the same page. You know what I'm saying? But I've got people who are in their first, second year as administrators, people who've come from an elementary and a middle school. Like, my team is a very new team to the high school and to the Center of Excellence. And so my job is to help grow them as leaders. So whenever, you know, it's my time to go, I've got somebody who comes right next to me and is able to step in. So it's not gonna all start off all, you know, copacetic because of what, you know, where I am. And I believe all of us have had transition with our teams. And in that transition, you know, with any team, you're going to, you know, it's gonna, you know, you got to get on some same pages about things. Right. And we're in a better place. But it took us going through some of these trials and errors to get to where we are.
Well, are we too hard by asking that question? If you fight, you go home?
No, but I think if we would have started at the beginning, we wouldn't have these kids who are straight A kids who made these decisions.
We started last year.
I'm talking about this year.
I
can't go to last year.
The consistency
Last year's when it
just started.
Okay.
Last year's when it went into place.
I got it now, Dr.
Right.
St.
Yeah.
Louis,
Yes.
for new people that you've had to come in.
Yeah.
But just make it clear, if you we got your support here. Just make it clear. We don't need the image. We don't need this academic. Those students you got in your school are smart and sharp. We've talked to them, and I feel proud. But the only thing I say it again that brought tears to my eyes is when they didn't understand that they are valuable asset to that school and to fight. And it was unnecessary. So I know you're doing your job.
Well, and it keeps us up at night. We don't like to see what's happening on our campuses. That's not something that we enjoy to see. It hurts when we see our students who are fighting, especially if you look at the statistics and a lot of the students who look like me.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't like that. So that is why we came and we made that. We did that on our own as principals. And I said, whatever consequence I take from that, I just take. But I'm like, I can't keep having that. And so we're doing everything we can, but our power is limited in a school building. I know we might think we got a lot. It ain't a lot. So we do everything we can. I appreciate the support of Dr. Stoll, all the other principals, but it keeps us up at night.
Yeah.
We don't like to see what's going on in our buildings. But I do think that now students are thinking twice about the decisions that they're making and how it impacts their learning and others. And they're finding other ways to resolve their conflicts. But as long as they feel like there's not a consequence, they're always going to go with the easier route.
Dr.
That
Redis.
impact that you had 2 weeks ago, I think, did it wake up some?
It woke up everyone. That's what I'm saying. We haven't had a situation. We had one situation, and that was one student who targeted another student. That was not a fight. We haven't had any. I mean, I'm telling you, guys, my assistant principal, because those kids are reporting all type of stuff. Oh, they did this to me.
I was about to say, since you brought that up, since you brought that up, that's a segue to my request. One of the things that was said a lot is they didn't know about stop it at. Can we start pushing that? Because some of the fights are because, I'm not condoning them, but I'm just saying some of the fights was because they were being bullied. And so they got fed up. And so we need to push
And we
to
do.
stop it at
I know
more.
at my campus, I mean, at the beginning of the year, I push it to parents and students. We send emails. Like, we want our students to know. Sometimes it could be difficult getting the information to parents, especially as they get older. But we get a lot of stop it reports. We also just want our teachers to also be aware of all the resources and everything like that. So we can always do better, but we do push that information.
And as a follow-up to that, from sitting in these expulsion meetings, each and every one of y'all ask those parents, do you know about the Stop It app? And we heard so many times. So Ms. Randall has gotten with Mr. Barnes.
Awesome.
We've got a schedule for that to go out on a regular basis now, because we were hearing the same thing y'all are hearing, to make sure that our parents know about Stop It.
Awesome.
And the fighting policy. is
And the
also-
fighting policy as well.
Yeah.
Both are going out, and we're going to go out regularly.
I think that even at the beginning of every semester, you could hit that again. No fighting, no threatening.
Once a
I
week.
mean,
We're doing it
I'm
weekly.
talking about, you can do it weekly, but just
Just get in front
an
of it.
assembly where,
Monday
because they all say, well, we didn't know. How could you not know?
But I think once we've kind of calmed things down, it's been nice to focus on the positive. I don't want to keep bringing up to students, don't make bad decisions. Let's make some good decisions. We have a whole students who made whatever grade score on their ACT, and they're in the ACT club. Like, that's where we're trying to focus our energy is. Once we've gotten this kind of to a smooth place, we want to keep celebrating our students who are making good decisions, and that's helping us as well.
PBIS.
Yep.
I sure heard.
Can,
I wouldn't hurt me. I remember.
I know. Okay, so I'm gonna turn my microphone over.
I have a question, and that's about the change of placement, and then like you have 10 students, you can't put them all at one place, or all of the places are full, and you can't put them in virtual, or you can't put them in ALE. Where are we on the twilight?
Yep.
We are working very hard so that can start after the Christmas break. We had to work out some financial issues, but that is our hope, that we will be able to start the Twilight School after Christmas break.
We're also opening up some more seats virtually as another option.
Okay,
Okay,
excuse me.
good.
So as I just, matter of fact, had a conversation with Dr. Reynolds and Mr. Brown. We've got some students that, because we're full, we'll just add some more seats, because we can't have them out if they're recommended for virtual, but there's no seats. And that's why they came up with the idea of Twilight School, which is another alternative. So we're going to add more seats, and then I think we got the finances. I think we're ready to go for second semester
We think so, yeah.
on both campuses.
Well, I know there's nothing more frustrating than having a student that now it's called go to the change of placement, but in years past, that the student ends up right back in the classroom, and the teacher's like, what in the world's going on? But you have no place for that person to go. So that's very frustrating to teachers. I know that. I've seen it. So I'm hoping that we have some more alternative seats for the change of placement. That has to be a major priority for us, so that we can take care of anybody that's coming into a change of placement conference. And I think we had a lot of change of placement conferences. I can't remember what the data showed on that.
I
but
try to put it in weekly. If you
Yeah,
look under
there were-
the student services
Mhm.
portion of I put every week how many we have coming. They're on Wednesdays. So
Yeah.
if you
I
just kind
know.
of read that part
There's
of my
been
board
quite
report,
a few.
we have
So-
them every week, a lot.
Thanks.
Ms. Walcom?
So just wrapping it up, I don't want to hound on this, but how do you feel about a cell phone policy? Do you feel like cell phones are playing a part of this?
Yes.
Say that a little louder, that mic.
Yes.
So, with that being said, any suggestions? I'm all ears. What do you want to do? It's your building. What would you like for us board members to do to help you regarding the cell phone pandemic?
Well, right now we have some experiments going on in the state where they've taken the cell
school.
phones away. So I think we'll have some conclusions from that at the end of the year when we see
not
what's
willing to
happened
wait
with
till the
them.
end of the year.
But you've got to have, you've got to look at all these different systems, because you can try and say, yeah, we're going to not have cell phones, and then they figure out all these ways. So I'm wondering if what the state is is doing this year will give us some good feedback that maybe we can then try to implement.
I'm sorry, I'll say one thing on the cell phone. If we, or when we move to a policy, we're gonna have to have parents on board, because that's gonna be our biggest hurdle.
Yep.
Is the pushback from parents that you're not gonna take my child's cell phone. We already hear it now. You know, I'm not as worried about taking the cell phone from the actual students. It's the parents that we're fighting when it comes to the cell phone, because we have parents telling their child, you call me in the middle of class if you have a problem with a teacher. And they do not want their child without their cell phone.
That's what we got into when we were trying to say no cell phones during class. The parents wanted
Right.
to be able to contact their kids whenever they wanted to. But I had just got finished reading The Anxious Child. I don't remember the author. I think I told you if you remember the author. But it talks about how the cell phone is rewiring their brains, how the phone-based childhood is changing just the way they interact with other. I mean, the very best thing we can do for our kids is, and not only are they on their phones, they're on screens at school. They have screen all day long, and it's not good for them. And I think it's something that we really need to be having deep discussions about.
I feel at the high school and COE, majority of the teachers do a really good job of collecting student cell phones. They put them in a little pouch. They don't use them in class. It has really helped with them focusing on learning and bell-to-bell instruction. It's when they go home, we can't help what they're doing on Threads, Instagram, TikTok. So when our fights have been the first thing in the morning, because they're fuming upset from whatever has transpired on social media or their text message. And so the conversations we've got to have with our students is to kind of help them walk through, like, making the decisions that they're making. You know, why are you still so upset about this? So really helping them connect with knowing. I always like to make sure each one of my students knows that they have at least one adult on our campus that is like their person. It could be me, a counselor, just somebody that they feel comfortable going to. But even if you can get rid of cell phones, they're still going to leave school and be with that phone for 16 hours and they come back to school. So we've got to just help our students process some of that. But I feel like we've done a really good job this year of like collecting phones, letting students be in class and learning, and it's helped and it's been consistent. So shout out to the staff.
So what I'm hearing is more of social and emotional learning is what needs to happen, because that's where they're lacking possibly, which the cell phone plays in part of that. Cindy, to come back to you, The Anxious Generation is the name of the book. It's how the great rewiring of the childhood is causing an epidemic of mental illness, and it's by Jonathan Haidt. Excellent book. Everyone ought to read it. My pastor actually recommended that to the congregation a few weeks ago. It's that profound. It is such a good book. I recommend anyone and everyone to pick it up.
Okay. That's very good. I want to ask, I heard everybody's voice of Miss Hampton. Miss Hampton, because as you know, there has been a lot of criticism about your campus.
Yes, ma'am.
And you need to tell the board what's really going on, or what we can do to help you, or whatever issues you see as priority. Let us know something, please.
Well, when it comes to the fighting, I mean, our main issue was that we were running into hurdles just getting our kids to the change of placement process. So if you look at 2023, you see that our fights decreased. We were not coming up against any pushback when we were sending kids to change of placement. But at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, we were receiving pushback when it came to sending students to change of placement. So then we did something that really reflected what the 6th grade campus was doing. We were allowing students to do their first fight. We give them suspension, and then the second fight would be when we recommend them for a change of placement. But really the most powerful thing when it comes to fighting was when we were sending them to change of placement on that first fight, and that's why we saw that decrease in 2023. So that was the main thing from my perspective that led to the increase in the fighting, because kids saw that we took a hard stance and then we backed off of it. And if they see us back off of it, then they stop taking it seriously. And so I had to say thank you to Dr. Paluski, because I expressed that to him, And he was able to have some conversations that helped us get our kids back to the change of placement conference. And I think that is going to help us bring down that fighting number. But that's why it increased. We started the year and we weren't able to take that firm stance at the beginning of the year. And so unlike last year where we saw a decrease, this year it's just been steady, about 13 or 14 fights every month.
Okay, only thing I'm concerned about again is that I know you have administrators under you, like your dean.
Yes.
And how many deans do you have?
I have 2 deans and 3 assistant principals.
Well, seemingly they're not accountable, or you need to have that conversation with them?
No, they are. So when I say that we were having.
No, let me hold it. It's not about the fighting.
Oh, okay.
It's about the students using profanity and nothing is being done about it.
Yes, ma'am.
That's that level. And you know that's a problem with any adult, that they feel that, I understand one teacher was called bald-headed and then nothing happened to them. Just hearsay.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
I know if you're over them, you can correct all of these hearsays that the board has heard, because we've heard a lot of things negative, and I don't believe everything in that building is negative.
It's certainly not negative, but I will echo what Dr. St. Louis said. I had a new team member, and so we were doing some teaching on our campus. We have really firm systems. I have an administrative handbook that tells our administrators exactly what they are to do, and all they have to do is an incident happens, they go to the admin handbook, it tells them exactly what to do. When it comes to issuing consequences, they follow the district handbook. But if they're not doing that, then they're not following the expectations that I've set forth for them. If a student cusses a teacher, our handbook says they go home. And that's the expectation. You cuss a teacher, you go home.
And I do want to applaud Ms. Hampton. In her first Cobra Stat this year, she had gone over several systems and structures that she and her team have put in place specifically for discipline, how to handle it in the classroom, what happens,
Yes.
what is the communication back to the teacher, because we heard that as well, that if the teacher wasn't getting communication back from the administration, so
Yes.
that was when we all witnessed that. So I do want to recognize you in front of the school board for those systems that you have put in place.
Thank you.
Well, then that just leads to the follow-up question. When you're training someone new, I know you give them an opportunity to learn. I mean, how long before you start having accountability for someone under you? How much grace you have before it's like, okay, now it's time to
tighten up?
From my perspective, I always have accountability. I do provide opportunities for people to learn. So if there's any, I'm trying to be very careful with my words because this is this is really personnel.
Yes.
That's correct.
But I do give them an opportunity. I provide the teaching. So if someone is struggling with something, then I provide the coaching. Now, if I provide the coaching and then you're still not doing it correctly, that's where the accountability piece comes in.
All right. All right.
Can I ask another question about change of placement? Where do those conferences occur?
They occur at our safety and security building in Chief Finks's conference room, just because sometimes our parents do get very upset, and that's just a good neutral setting, and we have security there if we need them.
Do you typically have the parents at those meetings?
Yes, the parents are always invited to the meetings, and always the parent and the student come to the meetings.
I have one last thing. If it's not documented, it didn't happen.
Right.
Got it? And so those are people that are under you, that you're supervising. If it's not documented, it didn't happen, and that's probably why we're getting so many conversations as board members, because there's no documentation. And as a board, we can't do anything without what?
Documentation.
Thank you.
So moving forward, the tardies, how's your tardies? We see the graph. But how many repeat offenders do we have on the tardies? Would you say it's like same family that's getting us to those numbers, or is it like multiple families? And is there anything that those families may need? Is it because we've got one car and two people sharing a car? Do we know these things?
Let me click us to the tardy one.
Yeah,
Hold on.
let's jump forward.
I was like, hold please. Hold on. I think it's this one. There. Okay, repeated tardies. At 7th and 8th. There you go.
Okay, so I can speak to our repeated tardies. Our repeated tardies are we have determined that they are the same students. So what we have implemented at the 7th and 8th grade campus is lunch detention, and we've changed our lunch detention process. So previously, lunch detention occurred in the cafeteria. You got all this clout because everybody saw you sitting in the lunch detention section, and it didn't have the effect that we wanted it to have. So now lunch detention occurs in a room in the building. Students go to that room. Their lunch is brought to them. They do not leave that room, and so they do not receive any type of clout for being in lunch detention. And what we do is we run a report twice a week. Any student that has more than 5 tardies has lunch detention. If they don't show up for their lunch detention, then their lunch detention turns into ISS. And that's something that we started in the month of November because we were struggling with the caring about getting to class on time. And so that's something that has been helpful to us, implementing some consequences, and then also implementing our PBIS. So what we've asked teachers to do is when that bell rings, close the door. Everybody who's in the classroom, they get a PBIS point. Everybody who's not in that classroom, they get marked tardy. So they're getting marked tardy, they're in the running for lunch detention, but these kids who are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that's the majority of our kids that are doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're getting their PBIS points and an opportunity to purchase something from our PBIS store.
Perfect. Good deal.
This should look good.
And those are significant drops.
Yes.
Yes.
That needs to be commended.
Yes, it does.
To commend you, if I look at this sheet, it looks so good, but I wish we could just talk about the positiveness. You know what I mean? Encourage your staff. Positive. When I look at this, it looks pretty good. I don't have any complaints. But your staff, you got to motivate them.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell them, think positive. We're here for the students.
That has been a conversation that we've had to have because like going back to our fighting, and you think of like we had 14 students who are repeat offenders, and I mean overall, like we have to have that number at least. There are about 50 kids who have been in a fight, but we have 1,100 some odd kids on our campus, so that means I have about 1,050 students who are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's something that I've even had a conversation with our admin team about, because sometimes we get bogged down, and I say to them, but remember, this is 50 kids out of 1,100. The majority of our kids are doing a great job, and they deserve to be celebrated.
I say that from the beginning. The point is, motivate your teachers. If you could have heard them yesterday at the fair, anything but. And we have to encourage them. We're here for the students. I know what you're doing, but looking at this is marvelous. 7th and 8th grade incident changes. You're doing wonderful.
Thank you.
Now, we just need the incidents 1, and please, Dr. Pete, so they'll understand it coming from your mouth. Follow policy. That's all we're asking. We would have the conversation if you had followed the what? Policy. I don't want to write a principal up. I'm just a board member. You don't need that. And board members don't write principals up. We are here to what? Support you. Tell us what you want. Tell us. What do you want?
Don't get her started.
Here, let me write that list.
Okay.
No, I will say for our campus, tardies has been extremely difficult since I've been here. And I can't speak to, it's been hard to enforce the number of students, the number of staff, being consistent with tardies, the number of parents who drop off students late, the number of drivers who come to school late. I mean, it's just been hard to get a handle on. We thought this year we were going to be able to do scan their ID badges. We weren't able to do that process, but that is an area that we struggle with on our campus. I tell my staff, you can't expect the principal to be the person working hard for tardies. Like, it has to be all of us doing that, and it is. So I'm just saying to you all, I'm not going to, beat a dead horse, but that has been an area of struggle for my campus. And so if you're asking for where we need support for high school and COE, it's around tardies. It's around attendance.
Thank you for your honesty.
Well, and
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, and I also know you have a lot of students, and you have a huge building, and I have heard many students say, and scheduling's a nightmare, no doubt. I can't even imagine doing the schedule for all those students, but, if you got someone over at music and they're over to D-Tower for next class, I mean, it's going to be hard for some of those kids to get there on time, even if they go directly. So I realize that's going to be an ongoing problem in the high school.
Do we know if the tardy is like at the beginning, the first period of school, or if they're occurring more in the daytime? Do we have that kind of data?
Talking about for all of our schools or for the high school campus?
High school.
Any of them, but
Sometimes it is a little discouraging to see the number of students who come to school late, the number of parents who drop off their kids late to school. Just to be honest, we make sure our parents understand, like, every minute matters with them being in class. I tell our students that it's disruptive to the learning environment. I will say we have a lot of our tardies going into the start of the school day. Flex time sometimes can be an issue, and then after lunch. So everybody, I guess they're trying to walk off those cheeseburgers. I'm not sure, but.
What do they get for being tardy?
Well, they're supposed to get detention or Saturday school.
Okay.
But I'll be honest, again, it's not been consistently done on my campus.
Okay.
We do tardy roundup sometimes. That's really effective for our students to do a tardy roundup, because those kids are like, hustling to class because they don't want to get caught in a tardy roundup. It's hard to do that every class period, every day with just your admin team. It's just not enough of us to do that. It's just not enough of us to do it every day, every class period. It just becomes a lot. So we do it throughout the week sometimes. But yeah, that's been a struggle. But that's the most effective, is a tardy roundup over just, marking a student tardy and writing a referral.
so then when they get to school in the morning and they're late, they're admitted into class late.
Mm-hmm. And we didn't want to start off that way. Originally, we had wanted to have, we had thought we had this ID scanning badging system where students had to get their badge scanned, and they would have a pass, and they would be getting detention. And it's just like, I'm sorry, you better get to school on time. I know that Chick-fil-A biscuit was important, but you're late. But that did not work out for us, and that was something that I did not anticipate, and so we just had to pivot. But yes, they have to go to class. We don't want to keep hindering them from being even more late, but they do go to class.
But it's basically disruptive to the class when they come.
Yeah, because the doors are locked, and so the teachers haven't opened the door. They're trying to teach, and you've got kids coming in there 15, 20, 30 minutes after class has started.
Why did the badge scanning not work?
The company that we were looking to purchase from, we thought that they could scan the badge and their student's picture would show up so we can see. We got to verify that that's the student, and that is not what that company was actually going to be able to do. And so we just kind of pressed pause on that.
So is it like a clock-in system for the child?
Kind of. It would be like, Nadia comes in school, boop, you're badged into school. So one that tells us that this is who's supposed to be in the building.
Yeah.
If a student is late to school, it can expedite us, getting a pass to them or letting our teachers know these students are late, and we could already generate a list of late students versus we're trying to run a report in eSchool or trying to do a Google spreadsheet. That would just be an automatic, information we had access to.
What can our badges do that the students have? I mean, do they have a barcode on them?
They have a
No,
barcode code, but I don't even
it.
think they can use them for lunch. So I think there's some capabilities that I'm sure we could look into using. We just haven't explored that.
I know the system that was used in the library had the ability to put a student's picture in, and it would come up when you would scan that, but I don't know if it's integrated into.
It is
the
something that we've
system,
got to
but-
look into. I mean, think about it going all the way back to getting on a bus
Yes.
and swiping on. We've had this incident where kids have gotten on a bus that are not even our students.
Yes.
So it's from a safety aspect as well, and I do think I agree that's something that the technology exists. We've got to look into it, how it can be part of a solution for our school administrators.
I agree.
But that's one of those situations where with tardies for our campus, it has to start the first day of school. And it'd be hard because parents be like, oh, my baby was lost. They're late, you know, because as long as we kind of keep not being consistent, and that's just like I said, I'm just being honest with you all. That's the struggle for me as a principal. It's a struggle for our campus. There's a lot of things that we do well, but getting our kids in class and that sense of urgency has been a difficult task.
But I do want to point out, you know, when you look at 176, you had about, roughly on your campus, both campuses, about 2,400 students. That's about 13% of the students that aren't on time, but you got 86% that are. And I think that's a positive thing to celebrate.
It'd be nice to have that percentage on these charts.
I'm sure we can do that with the help of Ms. Hale. if
I know, I was
she's
going to say,
still
Ms.
here.
Hale doesn't want to hear that, but
She is a genius with
I
this
think it's for
data,
all of
let
our
me tell you.
parents and all of our kids that are doing the right thing.
So we can see the positive.
So we can show the positive.
Absolutely.
We could come up with a follow-up.
We're always
with
looking
that.
to, you know, how
We
to
need to
solve.
know the negatives, but
Right.
we also want to celebrate.
Celebrate,
the
that's good.
positives.
And we're also doing PBIS points too. So like students who come on time, like they have, so that's been helpful because the kids be emailing like, Dr. St. Louis, my teacher, I didn't get my PBIS. So like it matters to them to get those PBIS points. We're working to open a physical store in our building so students can purchase and, you know, buy things with their points. And so that's been helpful. We just started, we kind of started a little later. So, you know, pointing out the positives that our students do, and that's been good.
is there a common thread on what students say why they're late to school?
Why they say they're late and why they're late can be very two different things.
Right.
So,
Can you give
some
me
of our
either one of those versions?
some of our students have legitimate reasons. Like I have students who have kids at home. I mean, they've got honest reasons why they're late to school. And then we have some of our students who would love to walk their boyfriend or girlfriend to class. And that's really important to them when they're in school. And so it's just different things.
It
And
is
there
the
are,
gamut.
our building is very big. And so if you're walking all the way from the bottom of K Tower and your class is at the top of A Tower, that's a long stroll. And the way our building is set up, there's not a lot of, like, if you go down their hallway, there's no shortcut. That's just the only, so if you've got 1,500 kids in that hallway, I mean, I try to move around and it's just like, we're just, there's, you know, all trying to walk in the same direction. And so it can be difficult. So we do sometimes do like a staggered release for some of our kids who have to move a little further to different classes.
I was staying 5 minutes for 30 minutes late for class. Did you say 30 minutes?
That's our students in the morning time.
It's the morning.
What
Ending
is
on a
this?
positive note, is there anything you need regarding PBIS? Is there anything we board members can assist in asking the community for rewards, treats for the PBIS? Is there anything that we can do within our power to help you, the reward system? Just help the reward system. You talked about a store coming into the high school. Love that idea. Love that.
I think all of us would benefit from donated items that we can use so we don't have to find ways to purchase those for our schools. So I don't want to speak for Ms. Hampton and Mr. Clark, but you know, we all like free.
Yeah.
So like
I
in
agree
our
with
Flat
that.
screen TVs, or what do you
well,
know?
no, so like we're doing things like letting students purchase merchandise, but even
Sure.
like, you know, tickets to games or, you know, tumblers, anything like that for our students that they care about. I mean, it could be
Swag.
school supplies. Some of our students
Probably-
are like, here's a nice backpack. So if members of the community would be willing to allow us to donate items that our students can utilize their points for, that helps us, because when you have 1,000 students or 2,000 plus students and they're all trying to get a PBIS points, that stuff's going to run out quickly in your store. So that's what I would say.
There's probably certain things, though, that a 6th, 7th, 8th grader would like.
And they're
try to earn
not
points
big
for.
things. Like at the 7th and 8th grade campus, some of our hot items or the pimple pouches.
Yes.
They love the pimple patches. Ridiculous.
Hey, whatever works.
We sold some of the inserts that they can stick in their shoes so that they don't crease their shoes. Those were
I need some of those.
right.
I
Those
get
were
in trouble with my kids.
those were popular items, and ribbons for the girls. They really love the ribbons. So it isn't. I don't think it's super fancy things that they want.
And at the beginning of each year, we've done a physical store for the last 4 years, and it's worked really well. And we survey our students at the beginning of the year and ask them what they would like to see in the store. We try to replenish it with that, with the understanding that it can't cost a lot.
Right.
But we also work with Ms. Heather Rhodes with our Title IV funding that can also fund the PBIS store. And so that's how we're able to spend some of that money. However, I'm with Dr. St. Louis.
We can get a list
is
to you all.
good.
I mean, if we need to get a list, we can. But I mean, honestly, it would, like, we've even asked some of our partners, our business partners, if they'd be willing to donate some things to come into our school store. Yeah, for our students.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, how do we keep the positive about your school? You know, as board members, they come and tell us everything. And it's not always good. But because we trust you and we read your reports and we know what you're doing, is there anything that we could say or do? Because I'm always proud of North Rock School District all my life.
I will say that we've got some really great things going on in our schools. So one, I welcome anyone to come to our building so you can see for yourself the things that our students are doing, that they're learning, that they're accomplishing. I'm extremely proud of our students and our staff. There are a lot of days I just walk through our building, I'm like, man, these kids are really in here learning and these teachers are really teaching. Like, I'm really proud. But I would just say, help us tell our story. Because of course, like
marketing, you said it. Little Rock School District, every day on Facebook, in the paper, all of that. And we have some smart students. Have you ever come to those luncheons when we had them and they be talking to us?
Yes.
The geniuses.
They're very intelligent, but we also have all these different pathways and opportunities for our students. So the more you all know about what's going on our campuses, you can help tell our story. Whether that's through social media, it's at a community event. Like, man, did you know what they were doing at the that engineering pathway at COE? Or did you know that our students, and this is really happening, we just took our students in hospitality and tourism to the Clinton Library. And we paid for each one of them to eat lunch at 42. They cleared out the entire restaurant just for our students for a guaranteed experience, because we want our students who are in the hospitality and tourism pathway to be able to speak about hospitality and tourism in the Central Arkansas region. Those are the things, and those kids had the best time to do that today. And so we want, and I can put it, but I want you all to know the things that we're doing. We also sent our students who are pre-educators. These are students who want to go into education. Some days I'll be like, girl, pray about that. But, you know, when they go, they're actually interning at Meadow Park Elementary School in Crestwood. And they're going and working with other teachers so they can learn about teaching. So those are the things that I want you all to know. And they're doing great things at the middle school, at the academy. Know our story so you can help tell our story. So you can shut down some of the people who want to be toxic. There's always going to be
television, doctor.
Huh?
Who's that over you on television?
Mr. Sella.
Mr. Sella, yeah.
He needs to, when you're doing
And
things
we're
like
working,
this-
and we are working to increase but people ask, you ask how we can help? I'm saying that as board members, if you know our story, you can help tell our story. So when somebody comes to you and says, oh, man, then you can be like, but I also heard all these great things, you can counteract some of that negativity with the positivity. Because it's easy for people to get sucked into sometimes the negative things. We all do it. You know what I'm saying? But if you help them remember, like, but I just heard y'all took all these kids to such and such and did this great thing, and, you know, the numbers are down on this, and they'll be like, oh, you right. You know, so help us to tell our stories.
And to that point, it's a great point, Dr. St. Louis, because we've been talking about, do you want to talk about how Mr. Barnes and his staff has come over recently and how we've started to brainstorm the marketing of our academies?
We even have a theme, like Sky's the Limit is our theme for our school and our pathways and being able to have students choose that. But we met with the entire communication department on, highlighting 2 ambassadors, every month so they can tell our story, and highlighting pathways and different things like that. And so we had a whole conversation about our pathways, our academies, and just different things that we're doing on our campus. And now they've already got graphics and everything. And so just having that help for Mr. Barnes is really impactful to see the things that are happening in our schools. And so we did get to sit down with them.
To see those things, those videos played at all of our elementary and middle school PTA meetings, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Whenever all the parents come in to see the program, and you've got all the parents there, and you can just run some.
When you've got that dead time, and you've talked about that before the event. It's great.
Yeah, that's good. And I got the top award for reading about you all every week. Bam, so I know what you're doing.
Coming back to Mr. Clark, what's in your store? I'm making a list. I'm writing things down as y'all talk. So what's in your store right now?
It's all the way from school supplies to North Little Rock Middle School swag. We have purchased this year, like Miss Hampton was saying, the pimple things. Whatever works.
For a fact,
The bracelets. A lot of the boys have wanted like trading cards, whether it be Pokemon, soccer cards have been a huge hit. Backpacks. That's some of our big ticket items. Like we'll purchase like a Nike or Under Armour mesh backpack.
You have to have a lot of points for that, right?
Sketchbooks. They love the sketchbooks. And so those are just some of the basic things. It's changed this year so much it's hard for me to keep up by year, but those are some of the basic items that we always keep in there.
Coming back to you, Dr. St. Louis, what about like come and go gift cards or Sonic gift cards? I'm thinking $5. I mean, that gets you a snack and a treat or something. Okay. I added that to the list without asking you, so I want to verify.
They've also asked for like homework passes, and that's something that we can do, but that was something that a lot of our students were like, we'd love to have a homework pass.
Okay, very good. I appreciate y'all. That's awesome.
Okay, the retired teachers cleaned out your closet. What's that? The other
Yes, our Wildcat closet.
Yes, and it's like all you do is call Coach Tackett, and the retired teachers, we're doing nothing in the daytime. So holler at us. Just call Miss Tackett and tell her what you need.
And so we're working on our Wildcat Alley is our school store, and then we're also working to build a teacher resource room. And so those things are just take time. So those, of course, always want help, but it just kind of takes time to get everything that you need in there. So when we get what we need, then we'll reach out.
Okay, please, we're gonna be positive. You be positive, okay? Please do that. I've heard some good reports tonight.
100%.
I've enjoyed this.
We appreciate you all listening and some feedback.
And Miss Kathy Hill, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your database that you did. I was amazed. There were some questions that I asked before the board meeting, and you popped up and gave both directors the things. They already knew it, but you've been, and I just want to say thank you to both of you directors. You're doing an awesome job. That's what you're doing, and you principals. I appreciate you very much. You could be working anywhere else, but you're in the North Rock School District, and I thank you for that.
And I just want to take time to say thank you to Dr. Stoll. You know, she stepped into this role and has been very supportive of us as principals. And, you know, I just want to shout out Mr. Clark and Ms. Hampton and Mr. Williams. You know, we're a little quad and supporting each other in the work that we're doing, and I do appreciate it. So
It's just the three of you all, wasn't it? Okay, y'all did good.
I've really learned, as much as they say I've supported them, I've learned so much from them. I'm very lucky to work with such an amazing team.
Especially.
And now I've learned all kinds of things, and it's been a good experience because I get to work with these amazing principals. So it's been fun.
Anything else?
No, ma'am. I'm good.
Appreciate
Thank you,
y'all's
guys.
time.
just let us know when you're dropping off the stuff for our school stores. We'll be waiting on those.
Hey, call me
I
if
got
you
me a
need
little list for you, sis.